Should I start over? No? Okay. All right, so continuing on, I do want to recognize that brownfields are major challenges, especially for communities that have limited resources or capacity to address these challenges. So the Brownfields program at EPA was created with the goal to help communities turn those challenges into opportunities. And because of the Justice 40 initiative, we're able to prioritize disproportionately affected communities that have environmental justice concerns. So brownfields redevelopment can enhance access to clean water, safe housing, and community spaces, fostering a healthier and more sustainable future for tribal members. So, oh, can you actually go back one slide? Oh wait, I have the clicker. Sorry. So this photo here, this is in Susanville, California. This is a site owned by the Susanville Indian Rancheria, and the site's actually located just behind their tribal offices. The site was a former ranch that had a farmhouse, agriculture, and livestock past uses. So this site has had multiple grants from our EPA Brownfields program, the most recent one being a $500,000 cleanup grant. This is being used to complete the remediation of contaminated soils on the site. But the remainder of this funding is going to be used to do some community engagement to get some reuse visioning for what this site is going to look like in the future. And one of those highly popular ideas is doing an interpretive trail with boardwalk paths that go through the wetland that's seasonal on the site. And they want to do some educational signs to talk about the species and the habitats that are there, as well as a display to discuss information about cultural artifacts that have been found nearby. So what can Brownfields grants do for your community? Cleaning up and repurposing these brownfields can lead to new opportunities in economic development and business to support community growth. And it can also improve environmental health by removing those hazardous substances, reducing pollution, and restoring ecosystems that are important to tribal heritage and traditions. So I want to acknowledge that historically, brownfield sites on or near tribal lands have been contaminated by historical uses, leaving tribal communities to suffer with the environmental health or impacts that they can bring. And so to address this, we are providing funding, financial resources to tribes to support the assessment, cleanup, and restoration of these lands. And our goal here is to empower tribal communities to reclaim and revitalize these areas, honoring cultural significance in the environment. So I'm just going to show a couple examples of brownfields reuses super quickly. So here is a former auto repair shop that is being turned into affordable housing. You can also do environmentally friendly transportation like rapid transit systems or EV charging. You can do tribal health, hospital clinics, open space and parks, as well as solar fields and other renewable energy projects. These can all go on former brownfields. So to dive into the funding a little bit more, we have funding for all steps of the process, from site identification to assessing exactly what and how much contamination is on your site, planning for the cleanup that is going to occur on the site, the actual remediation of the contamination, and then of course revitalization planning. So all the way up to the actual redevelopment is where the EPA Brownfields program can provide funding. And on this like flower looking diagram here, this shows all of our competitive grants that are offered on an annual cycle, but we also have some free technical assistance programs that we offer on a regular basis as well. And the last thing I wanted to point out is that because of the bipartisan infrastructure law funding, we're able to offer grants at higher amounts and just more grants while it's available. And that is only going to be for this current upcoming grant cycle and the next one. So it's a really good time to apply. Okay, so super quick overview. Like I mentioned, assessment grants, they range from $500,000 to $2 million. Cleanup grants, $500,000 to $4 million. And we also are offering a revolving loan fund this year, and that is up to $1 million, but you can also get supplemental funding over time. I also linked the frequently asked questions document. I find myself referring to this a lot. It's really useful, has a bunch of questions and answers about the application process. And for this year, applications are going to be due November 14th. So in general, these are the entities that are eligible to apply for our grants. So we have states, federally recognized tribes, nonprofit 501c3, general purpose units of local government like cities, counties, school districts, and then qualified community development entities. And here is kind of an overview of what the funding is going to look like nationally. This is how many awards are estimated in each category and the funding amount in each category. And as you can see, a big chunk of it is coming from bill funding. So this is just kind of an overview of that. Okay, so now I'm going to pass it to my colleague Lisa to talk more specifics about each of the grant types.
Thank you, Brooklyn. Hey, I'm going to ask you to help me with advancing the slides because I suck at this and you offered. So I appreciate your help. Can everyone hear me okay? Yes. How about online? Delayed. Okay. I'm just going to go through the various types of funding opportunities, grants that we have available. Brooklyn gave a good overview in the last couple of slides, but this is going to break down the specific types of grants that we're offering and a little bit of the timing and the use of the grants. So the first one is a community-wide assessment grant, and these grants allow the recipients to do assessments. So identify brownfield sites, create an inventory of brownfield sites, prioritize sites to do phase 1 assessments. A phase 1 assessment is just a document records review to kind of figure out what the history of the property is. Have there been various types of activities that may have released contamination? Or maybe the history is just unknown and you need to figure out, is there any sort of a concern that we need to follow up on? You can also do the phase 2 assessments, which involves going out in the field, collecting data, and evaluating whether you have a concern with contamination from hazardous substances or petroleum. And then a key thing also is doing cleanup planning and redevelopment planning, which is a great opportunity. You can look holistically at an area or look at a site-specific redevelopment plan and kind of figure out what sort of reuse may be appropriate based on the conditions at the site or conditions after a future cleanup. So we do have several types of assessment grants that are available during this current funding cycle, which ends on the 14th of November. That's when the applications are due. And for this first one, it's up to $500,000. And the other thing that's nice is you can assess properties owned by the recipient of the grant, as long as you're not responsible for the contamination, or it can also be used to assess properties that are not owned by the grant recipient. So I know a lot of tribes, for example, are looking at maybe acquiring properties. So it's a really great way to have the opportunity to go out and do assessment work, provided that the property owner will give you consent to come on the property and collect data before you agree to take on properties. So another type of grant that we have available is a community-wide assessment for states and tribes. And this is actually, I haven't seen this before, grants up to $2 million. This is kind of a newer grant that we've been offering just for the last couple of years. And it's available only for states and tribes. And I don't know if it's going to be around after the bipartisan infrastructure law funding goes away, these high dollar values. So if this is something that looks attractive to you, you might think about applying either this year or next year, which is the final year that the bipartisan infrastructure law funding will be available. And then we also have assessment coalition grants. So this is, the idea is sometimes certain entities just really don't have the capacity to manage a grant. And so it allows these higher capacity organizations to partner up with some other lower capacity partners, up to 4. They need definitely 2 and up to 4 to work together on implementing Brownfields assessment work. And this is also a grant that isn't necessarily offered. A couple of years ago, the coalition assessment grants went away. I think people were concerned. People actually liked the assessment coalition grants. So glad to see that they came back this year. And for this, it's up to 1.2 million, which is also a higher dollar value than I've seen recently. So they used to be about 600,000. So this is a higher value. Okay, this is just to kind of highlight the various types of activities that you could do under an assessment grant. Anything considered cleanup planning or reuse planning is all valid as long as you're working on eligible brownfield sites. And so you can do any of these types of assessments, or you can do others. This isn't a comprehensive list of everything that you could do, because we're really kind of very liberal interpreting what we consider to be eligible reuse planning, redevelopment planning, cleanup planning, because this is a great opportunity to kind of figure out where to go next. And then the next type of grant we have available are cleanup grants. And this, again, is one where the amounts are really a lot higher than we've had available in past years. They previously were maybe 500,000. So now you can apply for 2 million grant. You can apply for one up to 4 million, which is unusual and probably not likely to be around after the bipartisan infrastructure law funding goes away. So keep that in mind. The key is you need to own the site, though, to apply for a Brownfields cleanup grant. And you have to have completed an assessment, a phase 2 assessment, meaning you've evaluated what the conditions are at the property and you figure out what sort of contamination you need to address and what kind of cleanup you want to undertake. And one of the best things is normally we would require a 20% match for the grant funding. But with the bipartisan infrastructure law funding, we've removed the match requirement. So it's free money, basically. So that's something that's going to be around for the next couple of years, but maybe not after that. And then this is a revolving loan fund grant, is specifically recipient to make loans and subgrants for the cleanup of brownfield sites. And this is the one type of brownfields grant that can support cleanup on privately owned properties, because you can, as a grant recipient, you can make loans, low interest loans, to developers or other private entities that wouldn't otherwise be able to access brownfields funding, because normally, as Brooklyn mentioned, the funding is only available to units of government, tribes, and 105c3. This is the most challenging grant to manage, because you need to be able to make the loans, manage the program income. We consider program income when you make the loan, you get the money back, you need to put it in a separate account, and we call it program income after that. But the idea is that the funding that comes back then can be revolved and used for more cleanup activities or other eligible activities that you could do under the grant. And one of the best things of a revolving loan fund grant is that we do provide supplemental funding. So while you're in the competition to get the original revolving loan fund grant, once you have the grant, and if you've spent it down to a certain level, like I think now it's maybe down to 30% or 40%, we will offer supplemental funding to current RLF grant recipients, and it isn't competed. So it's, really a great opportunity for the RLF grant recipients to get more funding to put in their revolving loan fund without having to go through another grant application and another competition. So that's really a wonderful benefit. Okay. Sorry. No, that's good. I think I covered it all. Wanted to share this example of a site where various types of brownfield support have gone into redevelopment on a tribal property. This is the Holly Lake Redevelopment Project, White Mountain Apache Tribe, and this is in Arizona. And this tribe has, I'm going to talk about targeted brownfields assessment. This slide's kind of, well, I'll talk about it in a minute, but we can provide free assessment support using EPA contract which is something that this tribe accessed. They also have a non-competitive Brownfields Tribal Response Program grant, which I'll also talk about in one of the later slides. And we also gave them some assistance through our Land Revitalization Technical Assistance Program. And this is support that we offer through our headquarters to basically work on various problems. It can be really broad in determining the types of support that we might be able to provide. In this case, the tribe wanted to have an infrastructure assessment to figure out, hey, if we clean up the asbestos containing materials and lead-based paint in these cabins and we want to put them into productive reuse, what are the other types of support that we may need to make this a revitalized site, including whether the water mains are okay, what other types of infrastructure may be necessary. And then this tribe also applied to get cleanup funding, and they're right now in the process of starting the cleanup work. Is that right, Jenny? Jenny is our team member, Jenny Tung, who manages the grant for White Mountain Apache Tribe. So they've got a $500,000 cleanup grant to abate the hazardous building materials, and they're working on that. So this is a great example of, if you come into the Brownfields program and work with us, we like to be able to provide additional support to folks that are already working with us, and we kind of layer that type of support, and we try to offer as much as we can for a given property just to get it over the finish line, to get it into reuse, to the extent that we are able to provide support. Okay, so targeted brownfields assessment. So this is something that the White Mountain Apache Tribe had 2 assessment supports from us. This is really fantastic. This is EPA contract dollars. So what happens is you submit an application for a property that you want to have an assessment done on. It's a pretty simple online application, and it's something that's just reviewed by our team. So that's another fantastic thing about the targeted brownfields assessment. We call it TBAs, because all of those grants I was talking about, our team reviews applications, but we're not the decision maker in who gets ultimately awarded grants. It's a national competition. But in this case, the targeted brownfields assessment application comes in, and it's just our team that looks at it. And if it's a project that's of a reasonable size, we can't do huge projects, but we can do, several sites, several acres, depending on the funding that we have available and the nature of the work. And that we see that there's some sort of a community benefit. We will fund the project to the extent that we have the funding available, which we do now, because with bipartisan infrastructure law, we also got more funding for our targeted brownfields assessment program. So we've been pretty flush, and we've been able to really approve any application that is a good fit for the targeted brownfields assessment program. And the best thing about this is it's really kind of, we do all the work. We communicate with whoever applies at key decision points. We, work with you to figure out, what type of sampling we're going to do. We go out and we do the work. We evaluate the data, and we do give the applicant the opportunity to review everything and comment and give us feedback. But we're doing all the heavy lifting, and it's a really nice entree, maybe, into a competitive grant, because the output of the targeted brownfields assessment is an analysis of brownfields cleanup alternatives, which is kind of looking at, once we've discovered there might be some sort of contamination that needs to be addressed, looking at various cleanup options and comparing them based on cost, implementability, and effectiveness. And that's something that needs to be attached to a brownfields cleanup grant application. So we have several examples where we've provided the targeted brownfields assessment support to tribes and other entities, and then they've successfully applied for cleanup grant following that. Okay, and then this is another type of grant we have available that is not competitive. It's called State and Tribal Response Program grants. It's called our 128A program, and it's available to any state or federally recognized tribe. And the idea is it's funding that helps these organizations build capacity and then also do community engagement work. You can do site-specific work, including assessments and cleanups. And it's really very flexible. And the organization getting the funding really can figure out how they want to manage the program and spend the funding. And the key is it's a program where we hope that the entrants will come in and want to continue it year after year. It's not like one of our other competitive grants that there's a fixed time period and a project that needs to be completed. Where we think about this as more of a marathon versus a sprint. And the amount that's available varies depending on how long the entrants have been in the program. So if you're a new tribe, you haven't been in the program, you probably could get about $100,000. So initially, it's mostly going to cover maybe salaries. But then as you demonstrate that you're building your capacity, that you're spending the funding that you're asking for, you can request more funding and do site-specific work, identify specific projects in your funding request for following years. And there's no matching requirement for this. It's non-competitive. And right now we have about, I want to say maybe 18 tribes that are in the 120-day program, and then all of the states in Region 9 and the territories get this type of funding. And so Elk Valley Rancheria is another example of a tribe that's accessed various types of support from us. We've done a lot of targeted brownfields assessments for them. They've come into the 120-day program. They've gotten cleanup grant funding, and they've been really successful in carrying out these projects. This is an example of, they had, a couple of those just old abandoned hotels that they wanted to turn over and basically create open space, remove the eyesores from the town. These old hotels, I think, were kind of on the main drag as you come into the town, and nobody wanted to see those anymore. So they've cleaned those up, successfully managed the grants, and we'd love to continue working with them. Brooklyn manages. You don't manage Elk Valley? Oh, Richie, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, I do. Awesome. Thank you, Lisa and Brooklyn. And thank you all for making it to this point of the conference. Just by a quick show of hands, how many folks are familiar with the Center for Creative Land Recycling or have worked with CCLR before? Okay, not many. How about Brownfields? How many folks have worked with Brownfields or Brownfield redevelopment? Okay, only one person in the back. So again, I'm sure that many of your tribes or your groups may have things like called brownfields, even if you haven't been directly involved in the working of it. Really, like Brooklyn said, it can be a fantastic opportunity for redevelopment, for reuse, for finding community benefits. A little bit about our organization. We are a national nonprofit dedicated towards the sustainable, equitable, and responsible reuse of underutilized properties and environmentally impacted properties. So we were founded in Berkeley, but really we operate nationwide. We have a lot of folks such as myself. I'm based out of California. And really, to sum it up, we're here to help. We understand that contaminated properties can be very overwhelming. Forming that pathline to reuse takes a lot of different steps, a lot of different stakeholders. Really, one of the specialties of CCLR is the broad range of different people that we interact with. We recently had our conference, the California Land Recycling Conference in Carson in the LA area, and just had great attendance, a lot of new relationships being born, from the community groups, from the tribes, the local municipalities, and also working closely with EPA and DTSC on the regulatory side to make things happen. So Brooklyn mentioned a lot of the great free technical assistance available. CCLR is a part of that service. So we are the US EPA tab provider for 8 US states. That includes EPA Regions 9 and 10. I mentioned before California DTSC. One of the biggest parts of my role over the past couple of years has been the rollout of the Equitable Community Revitalization Grant, the ECRG. thankfully, there's been a lot of great funding going towards brownfield redevelopment over the past couple of years, and it's been great to be a part of CCLR, where really a major part of our mission is to help people access that funding and to figure out what comes next. And we had a booth outside. I hope people were able to meet SDSU and get to learn a little bit more about the great EJ Tic Tac centers. Again, with just great way to access some of the different grants and some of the resources. Acknowledging that capacity is one of the biggest, boundaries to people actually working towards that funding. That's why organizations like CCLR and SDSU are here to help you form that grant application and access that money. So I think you all heard the grant application coming up soon that really we wanted to push at this conference November 14th for MARC grants. CCLR is here to help you form a competitive application and go through all steps. So we're happy to meet with you, talk about the narrative sections, help you build an engagement plan for the different stakeholders. There's a lot of different EJ platforms and metrics out there that we can help you access from EJ Screen and sometimes more regional type tools. We can help you connect with grantees, and we put on a lot of webinars and different sources to share what works and how different people have approached this. There's a lot of different resources. So really here, I encourage you to check out our website, cclar.org, and you can see some of the different webinars and all of the different ways that we can help you on your reuse journey. Yep, and I'll go quickly through this, a lot of text, but really there's more than just the grant review. By show of hands, is anyone interested in applying for a MARC grant November 14th? Doesn't seem so yet, but don't turn away. Again, I think you saw all the different things that can be funded with that resource. The other things our organization offers, lots of different trainings, like I mentioned, webinars, online toolkits. There's a great guide towards equitable development that we helped develop recently. We can help you with redevelopment planning, so that's getting the community voice of what comes next in some of these areas. Help you talk through the financing and some of the different layering options. Our financing workshop was a great success at CalRC. We offer remediation support, so that's understanding how a contaminated property can be cleaned up. Again, it can be very complex, and I'm going to talk a little bit through some of the nature-based solutions which we've offered programming around. And like I mentioned before, stakeholder engagement. So what are the different ways you can get voices from people in the area of both how the cleanup will be conducted and what they want to see come out of it in terms of community benefits. Okay, something we thought resonated well with the themes of this conference and touching into TEK is nature-based solutions and what if we could use nature to heal nature. Again, thinking about the earth and the immense potential it has and tapping into some of the resources right in front of us. So nature-based solutions are actions that involve people working with nature as a part of nature to address societal challenges, helping to provide benefits for human well-being and biodiversity. So again, in thinking about our roles as stakeholders and as stewards of the land, we want people to think beyond just excavation and hauling material to landfills, but we also want people to think our potentially utilize local ecology, microbes, fungi, or plants to heal the soil and think about more innovative ways of approaching remediation. So like I mentioned, this could involve microbes or bacteria, and again, the specific chemistry will vary on your site. So we encourage you to reach out if this is something your organization would like to learn more about. Phytoremediation, or the ways that plants can uptake contamination. And then lastly, mycoremediation or fungus, which we think have great potential in this field as well. So living systems do not operate independently. If you're using, say, the phytoremediation, it could be a relationship with a fungus on the roots that allows it to do its job and stay healthy. We have the earthworms and we have the whole systems, really touching into the theme of this conference of helping nature help itself. And there's a webinar we're going to be holding in early December. I encourage you all to check it out on our website. I think the date should be December 11th of, again, having an ecology approach to site cleanup. So again, thank you all for listening. Please reach out to CCLR if you have any sites or any additional questions. I'm going to hand it back over to Lisa, I think. And yeah, please start thinking of your questions.
Thank you, Sebastian. One thing I want to mention before I forget, I don't know that I mentioned before that the funding requests for the 128A Tribal Response Program grants are due December 13th. So those are the non-competitive grants that we offer to tribes and states for capacity building year after year. And we receive, we get the funding request applications into us. So if that's something that you're interested in, please reach out to us so that we can give you the information and the specific funding request template if you're interested in submitting it. And again, that's due on December 13th. So does anybody have questions? Yes.
With that, Tom Gusty, Bishop Paiute Tribe. With the 128A funding, even though it's non-competitive, is there IDC with that? Because my tribe is now looking at, funding that has IDC and only applying for those ones that do.
It does. Yes. Absolutely.
Dylan Williams, Sherwood Valley Benapoma Indians. I got a couple questions. So for that revolving loan fund, if I understood it correctly, it sounded like you said a tribe could apply for up to $1 million to then disperse loans to contractors through that program?
Disperse loans to property owners. So it could be to commercial property owners, or you could have grants and sub-grants to eligible entities, so other units of government.
So the tribe would be the fiscal manager for that, and say, could the tribe then put interest on top of that loan and actually bring in a profit, or is that not available?
No, it is part of it,
Oh,
that
wow.
if you make a
Oh, cool.
loan,
Yeah.
you receive interest, and then it goes back into the account. You put it into an interest-bearing account
Right.
and maintain it. And something that I didn't mention, we generally stagger the revolving loan fund notices of funding opportunities. So we're offering it this year, but we probably will not offer it next year. We have also the multi-purpose grants, which are a combination of assessment funding and cleanup funding, and we normally stagger those. So this year we have RLF available. Next year we'll probably just have multi-purpose grant available, so no RLF. So if you have any inkling that you might want to apply, this would be the time to do it because it's available and the bipartisan infrastructure law funding is available, meaning you don't have to do a 20% match.
Dang, that would be, yeah, okay, possibly. Another one, the question I had was, because I know a lot of these projects are pretty expensive. So like percentage-wise, the grants you guys give out, typically how much of the total cost of a project do your guys' grants cover in general?
Well, it's really site specific, depending on the problem at the site.
Yeah.
But in general, with the revolving loan fund grants, the site could be up to $500,000. But the key is that the applicant decides how you want to define a site and break it up. So it's not that you just apply for a parcel number or some sort of designated perimeter. You can figure out the way you want to define a site and break it up into smaller pieces. For example, if you have a bigger problem that's going to need several of those.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so it's pretty flexible.
And then this is a question for you about the bioremediation techniques. So when we use, or people use funguses, because I've been learning more about that, to say clear hazardous waste or even radiation, like old nuclear sites, or where there have been problems. Do you have to take those, funguses, mushrooms off site and dispose of somewhere else, or does it actually deal with the issue on site and you don't have to actually, haul anything else with it?
So it depends on the type of contamination. So if it's something that could be like transformed or broken down, then you could likely not have to transport the fungus. But if it was, say, metals, those might just reside, and then they would be harmful to consumption. So again, it depends. But it's also sort of speaks towards the importance of getting someone trained involved. like HAZWOP or certified if you are going to be doing things, with potentially hazardous waste.
Tom Gusty, Bishop White Tribe again. I seen that the Apache tribe used the funding to renovate the cabins and everything. Was that on their land?
Yes.
And does it, like, could a trailers be something like that? Be done like that?
Well, it's generally, so Brownfields is meant to address contamination on land, and it could be in structures. Trailers are not, I mean, that's more considered like solid waste, I think.
It would be, but I'm
Yeah.
thinking of asbestos and lead paint.
Yeah. So that's a good question. And I think that you could make the argument if they're kind of fixed on
Okay.
site. And just to clarify, you mentioned renovation. The funding is specifically used for abatement.
I mean, abatement. I'm sorry, that was the key word. Abatement.
Yes. Does anybody have more questions? Any online questions? No? Okay, well, we're really pleased that you were able to stick around and join us in this very last afternoon session of the conference. And we certainly would be happy to work with you individually if you have questions that come to mind afterwards, or if you're interested in applying for some of our funding, we can support you to the best of our ability in doing that. So you have our contact information. Please do reach out to us. Did you want to say something too?
I was just going to say that QR code on the right will send you a link to Calendly if you want to set up a one-on-one to discuss your projects. We're happy to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.